Have you ever caught your own reflection in a shop window and almost looked away before you really saw yourself? Most of us do. Not because we're ashamed, because we've spent so many years looking for flaws that we've forgotten how to simply look. But what if, just once, you stopped? What if you actually looked, really looked, at the silver in your hair, the lines that have settled quietly around your eyes, the softness that time has folded into your face, and instead of searching for what's missing, you simply smiled? Not because you look 25 again. You don't. And that was never the point. But because, maybe for the first time in years, you genuinely liked the woman looking back at you. When did beauty stop being something we chased and quietly become something we carry? That's what we're going to talk about today. We've spent most of our lives being taught the mechanics of beauty. The right cream, the right shade, the right procedure at the right age to buy back a little more time. Nobody ever taught us the other side of it. The habits that have nothing to do with a mirror at all and everything to do with how a woman is experienced by the people around her. You know the feeling. You've met women who, by every conventional measure, might not be considered classically beautiful, and yet you couldn't look away from them. There was a light in them, a stillness, a warmth that made you want to sit closer, stay longer. That's not something a serum gave them. Today, we're going to walk through 7 quiet habits. Small, almost invisible shifts in how a woman moves through her days that change not just how she looks, but how she is felt by everyone she meets. None of them cost anything. None of them require an appointment. They simply require you to notice and then to choose a little differently than the world taught you to. The surprising thing is this. None of the women people describe as timelessly beautiful are usually trying very hard to be beautiful. They're simply living differently. Habit 1. She stopped fighting her reflection. Picture a woman getting ready for a family dinner. She's standing in front of her closet, and before she's even chosen an outfit, her eyes go straight to the mirror and straight to a list. The softness under her chin. The lines she didn't have last year. The reflection has become a courtroom, and she is always quietly on trial. Most of us know this ritual by heart. We were taught to scan for flaws before we were ever taught to simply see. But here's what nobody tells us. Criticism doesn't sharpen a face, it tightens it. Every time we meet our reflection with judgment, something in us clenches, just slightly. And that tension has nowhere to go but into our expression. Contempt has a way of etching itself into a face far faster than age ever does. Acceptance works the opposite way. Not the loud, performative kind, not loving every wrinkle as a slogan, but the quiet, private kind. The kind where a woman looks at her own reflection the way she'd look at an old friend who'd been through a lot. With tenderness, not inspection. That softening shows. It always does. And once a woman stops fighting her reflection, something else in her starts to loosen too. The way she carries herself when no mirror is even in the room. Habit 2. She protects her peace. Think of the last time you were around someone who was carrying a low hum of stress everywhere they went. You could feel it before they said a word. In the set of their jaw, the quickness of their movements, the way their eyes never quite settled. Now think of the opposite. Someone who walked into a room and the air itself seemed to slow down a little. Nothing dramatic, just calm. Chronic stress doesn't stay in the mind. It moves into the body. The shoulders creep toward the ears, the brow stays faintly furrowed, even in rest, the voice sharpens at the edges. Over years, a life lived in a constant state of alert starts to write itself onto a face, whether we intend it to or not. A woman who has learned to protect her peace isn't someone who has an easy life. Very often, she's someone who has lived through enough to finally understand which battles are worth her nervous system and which ones aren't. She's stopped answering every provocation. She's stopped absorbing every crisis that isn't hers to carry. And in protecting that peace, she gives her face permission to rest, which, it turns out, is one of the most beautiful things a face can do. Peace has a way of preparing us for joy, too. Which brings us to the next habit. Habit 3. She laughs more than she worries. There's a particular kind of woman we all remember from childhood. An aunt, a grandmother, a neighbor whose laugh you could recognize from another room. It wasn't polished, it wasn't quiet. It just poured out of her, unguarded. Somewhere along the way, many of us trade that kind of laughter for something smaller. We worry more efficiently than we laugh. We've gotten so good at anticipating problems that we forget to leave room for delight. But joy does something worry never can. It lifts. Genuine laughter softens the whole architecture of a face, lighting up the eyes in a way no amount of contouring ever could. And warmth, real warmth, has a kind of gravity to it. People lean toward it without knowing why. A woman who laughs easily isn't naive to the hard parts of life. Often, she's simply decided that worry has had enough of her time already. She's chosen instead to leave room for the joke, the story, the small delight in an ordinary afternoon. Kindness lives right next door to laughter, and it's just as visible. Habit 4. She says no without guilt. Imagine a woman being asked again to host the holiday, to take on the extra favor, to smooth over a conflict that was never hers to fix. For most of her life, she said yes, automatically, before she'd even asked herself if she had the capacity. And then, at some point, something in her shifted. She started to pause before answering. She started to notice the tightness in her chest when she was about to agree to something out of obligation rather than desire. And quietly, she started saying no, without a paragraph of apology attached. That single word, said without guilt, is one of the most confidence-building habits a woman can practice. Every boundary she sets is a small declaration. My time matters, my energy matters, my peace matters, and a woman who believes that about herself carries herself differently. Her shoulders sit lower, her eyes meet yours more steadily. There's nothing to prove because she's no longer negotiating her worth with everyone she meets. That same freedom shows up in something far more visible than her calendar. It shows up in what she chooses to wear. Habit 5. She dresses for herself. There's a certain kind of woman you notice in a crowded room. Not because her outfit is the loudest, but because it's unmistakably hers. The colors she loves, the silhouette that makes her feel like herself. Nothing borrowed from a trend, nothing chosen to disappear into the background. For years, many of us dressed for other people without even realizing it. For approval, for invisibility, for whatever the current rules of the season happened to be. Somewhere in that, we lost track of what we actually liked. Dressing for yourself isn't about being bold for the sake of it. It's about closing the gap between how you feel inside and what you present to the world. When that gap closes, something settles. You stop tugging at your sleeve, stop second-guessing the mirror before you leave the house. You simply are, and it reads as easy, which, more than any trend ever could, reads as beautiful. That same sense of self-trust tends to show up in one more place. The mind. Habit 6. She stays curious. There's a particular brightness in the eyes of someone who is still genuinely interested in the world. Someone learning a language for no reason but delight. Picking up a book on a subject she knows nothing about, walking a new street just to see where it leads. It's easy, especially as the years accumulate, to let curiosity quietly retire, to decide there's nothing new left to learn, nowhere new left to go, nothing left to be surprised by. But a curious mind keeps something alive in the face that no cream can replicate. An alertness, a spark, a sense of a person still very much in motion. Curiosity is, in its own way, a form of hope. It says, I still expect to be delighted by this world. It quietly says, life is still introducing itself to me. And there is something deeply beautiful about a woman who still believes tomorrow might surprise her. And that hope, that aliveness, becomes the foundation for the last and perhaps most important habit of all. Habit 7. She loves people generously, but herself too. Most of us were raised to be generous, to show up for our families, our friends, our communities, often at our own expense. Generosity toward others rarely needs to be taught twice. Generosity toward ourselves is another matter entirely. A woman who has learned true self-compassion isn't someone who never made mistakes. She's someone who has finally stopped punishing herself for the ones she made. She has learned to speak to herself the way she'd speak to someone she loved, with patience, with forgiveness, with grace for the years she didn't yet know better. And here is the quiet truth underneath all 7 of these habits. The face is not separate from the heart. It is in many ways a reflection of it. A woman who has made peace with herself, who has forgiven herself, softened toward herself, chosen herself without apology, carries that peace visibly in every room she enters. If these conversations remind you that beauty doesn't disappear with age, it simply changes into something deeper. I hope you'll consider subscribing to Her Golden Chapter. Every week, we share gentle conversations about confidence, purpose, and finding real joy after 60. It would mean a great deal to have you stay a while longer. One day you realize something extraordinary. The women you've admired most were almost never the youngest women in the room. They were the women who made everyone else feel calm, seen, welcomed, and understood. That's the beauty time created. It's found in peaceful eyes, in relaxed shoulders, in a genuine, unguarded smile, in a calm, steady voice, in kindness offered freely, in wisdom earned slowly, in authenticity that no longer performs for anyone. These are not the things time takes from us. These are the things time actually gives us if we let it. So go back for a moment to that woman in the shop window. By the time she's home, the day has settled around her. She takes off her earrings at a time, sets them down, and glances once more at her reflection. This time, she isn't searching for flaws. She simply smiles because she recognizes herself. And maybe that is the most beautiful habit of all: ending. Beauty was never hiding in youth. Youth simply introduced you to the world. Time introduced you to yourself. And perhaps that's the most beautiful transformation of all. Until next time, keep embracing your golden chapter.